Hello, everyone. This is a review video for the study questions for Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Number one, what does Wollstonecraft mean by, quote, the tyranny of man? It's key for me. Tyranny of man is a tyranny of men over women. That is, man here does not mean mankind or human beings. It means men, males of the species. And that, generally speaking, they're the ones who are doing the tyrannizing over women. So I think the tyranny of man really is short for the tyranny of men over women. And again, that tyranny, that idea of tyranny is that it's the exercise of power, but it's the unlawful and illegitimate exercise of power. And this is, I think, the central question of her book, of Wollstonecraft's book, is whether the power that men exercise over women is a rightful power or not. And what she's trying to argue is that it's not a rightful power, and so it would be a tyranny. Number two, why does Wollstonecraft think that the education of women is much like the education of military men? Now, of course, she's talking about the typical education, such as it was, that women got in her time. And she compares it to the education of military men. And basically, it means they got a bad education. That military men were typically did not get proper educations, and women do not get proper education. So their education is haphazard. It's a smattering of this and a smattering of that. And much of their education is from experience. Education through experience of the world, or a limited experience of the world. So an education that would be something that would emphasize appearances as opposed to substance. That would emphasize manners as opposed to virtue. That would be superficial in every sense. So that what comes out of it is a person who's got some style, or who has got some appreciation for flair and things like that, but no real substance, no real knowledge of things like science, history, languages, literature, that would give a real foundation for a substantive character. And so what she's basically saying is that people in the military and the military of her time, quite different now, and women both suffer from incomplete educations, and then this has a great effect on their characters, a negative effect. Number three, how does Wollstonecraft conceive of what a real, proper education should be? And I have the paragraph here. This is on page 6, where she says to do everything. This is just to give you an indication, because she says things about education more than once. But right here, she says to do everything in an orderly manner is a most important precept, which women, who generally speaking receive only a disorderly kind of education, seldom attend to with that degree of exactness that men, who from their infancy are broken into method, observe. So a real education is a methodical one, a systematic one, an orderly kind of knowledge that starts, let's say, learning geometry. You have to start from first principles, and then you have to see what follows from those first principles and work things out in detail. Women typically don't get that kind of education. This negligent kind of guesswork, for what other epithet can be used to point out the random exertions of a sort of instinctive common sense, never brought to the test of reason, prevents their generalizing matters of fact. So not only does an education give you facts, it generalizes from those facts, right? So we have more than the facts. We have general truths in addition to anecdotal or particular truths. So they do today what they did yesterday merely because they did it yesterday. That is, learning a real education doesn't just tell you, oh, the sun rises every day. A real education tells you why the sun rises every day. A real education gives you general truths presented in an orderly and systematic way that enables you to think for yourself. Eventually, I think is really the point here. It enables you to reason for yourself. So I think she's got some connection here with obvious connection with Kant. Finally, number 4, Wollstonecraft claims that, quote, virtue has only one eternal standard. explain the significance that this has in her argument about the place of women in society. We can look for that quote. Why not? I'll show you where it is. Standard, would it be standard or virtue? That would be better than it. Yeah, this is right here on page 12. Let it not be concluded that I wish to invert the order of things. I have already granted that from the constitution of their bodies, men seem to be designed by Providence to attain a greater degree of virtue. There, she's just talking about things like upper body strength. I mean, men have maybe are a little stronger, or physically a little, in some ways, have an advantage over women typically. But that's not what's important or most important. She said, I speak collectively of the whole sex, but I see not the shadow of a reason to conclude that their virtues should differ in respect to their nature. The virtues, things like intelligence, honesty, wisdom, justice, moderation, courage, that these things don't have a gender. These things don't have a sex, as she would say. These are simply the virtues of a human being. So she says, in fact, how can they if virtue has only one eternal standard? I must therefore, if I reason consequentially, as strenuously maintain that they have the same simple direction as that there is a God. I mean, the importance of this, I would say, that virtue has only one eternal standard, is that there aren't female virtues and male virtues, they're just virtues, which is something that Socrates said 2,000 years ago. That the virtue of a man and the virtue of a woman are the same thing. So that women have to be allowed to be educated in the same way that men are, to get a real education. And women have to have the opportunity to develop the same virtues that men do, because virtue is virtue. And pretending that there are female virtues as opposed to male virtues is just an excuse for oppressing women. So it's incredibly important in her argument.